authentic conversations about ourselves and our community, exploring topics that uplift and inspire us. From personal growth to social change. So grab your teacup and get ready to join the conversation.
Call this the character assassination block, whether it's this case or any other case.
They didn't do that. He did that to himself. Always wearing nothing but a towel.
Prosecutors come out and they just assemble all of the worst things that they can do because obviously it's easier to demonize a defendant. It's easier to make the jury hate the defendant. I mean, part of what trying a case is you want a juror to want to help your client. So prosecutors know that. So what do? They call them the defendant. They bring out the worst possible looks for them. They start off with the worst day that any defendant's ever had. That is
Say, Peter, Emily Johnson running down the hall in a towel. That was Diddy. He did that to himself.
There's a reason why you're not supposed to have bad character evidence. There's a reason why judges make decisions as to whether it's more prejudicial than probative. That's the legal standard. And the reason they do that is you're not supposed to convict or prosecute by proxy. You're supposed to, as Harvey kind of set it up. Exactly. I get it, Nancy. But the whole idea is there's a case.
They're crimes.
Charges.
That's Tuckapena. Come on.
They're
You're
crimes.
a veteran defense lawyer, but you know Garagos is totally lying right now.
Okay. I want to move on to something else because Nancy, you talked about this right off the top about extortion, that he was threatening to release these tapes. I want to see what you guys think of this because I don't see this loop being closed here. So the big one they talked about, they were in Cannes and on a boat, and Diddy accused Cassie of stealing drugs from him, and he threatened her with this freak-off video. And they get on a plane. And how did you get back to New York? The prosecutor says. And it says on a commercial flight, I traded my seat to get away, but he traded to get next to me. So they go on from that. And they say, well, what did he show you? She says, freak-off videos. He played them for me on one of his laptops. He said he'd release them. Well, how did you feel? She says, trapped. And then they go on. And I think this is interesting. When you landed in New York, what did you do? Well, we went to dinner. And then he wanted to have a freak-off, so we had a freak-off. Why did you do it? To make him not threaten me. She never said that the extortion of saying I'm going to release the tape had anything to do with the freak-off. That had to do with drugs. So again, I don't see that they closed the loop on that. And I want to just give you one more. They talk about when she was dating Alex Fine, her now husband. The question, what, if anything, were you afraid would happen physically if you refused to do a freak-off? She says, I mean, it was always in the back of my mind that I would somehow be hurt by him. And she goes on to say she's worried about the tapes being released. So I'm confused about this because they've never connected the extortion to the freak-off, and that seems to be what they have to prove. Joe, am I off base here?
No, you're right. You're right. Look, you're 100% right, because even that testimony that you just heard and read, and you read it verbatim, is not extortion. An extortionate threat is, or an extortionate demand is, I will do this unless you give me this. I will release the tape unless you engage about stealing drugs or not stealing drugs, and that's not extortion. That's revenge, revenge porn. That's a different, maybe another crime. But all the crimes we've discussed so far are state crimes, and they are crimes. Nancy's right about that. They're crimes, and they have done a great job, the prosecution, at making Sean Combs look like a horrific human being, an absolute horrific human being. But we are talking about federal charges here.
Thank you. Yeah.
I've been saying this to you since day one. Since reading the
Y'all
indictment,
probably feel like
the
it's
whole case
Diddy.
will boil down to one issue: consent.
We got to pull out the
Consent
biggest
or
guns
not
for
consent.
Diddy's
Because
ass.
everything else falls if there is consent. And if you look at some of
You
those
know.
recordings of those text messages, the responses from her, they are consensual. And she could say on the witness stand, "Well, I wrote those things because I loved him."
Under duress or
It's
whatever.
hard for a jury to say, "Look, she's saying I want more freak offs."
Uh-huh.
But
Okay,
she
let me
didn't
get
really
in here,
want
Joe.
more
What
freak
sex
offs.
Let me get in
trafficking
here because I do
person?
actually think Harvey's
What sex trafficked person says they want more sex trafficking? Like I
wrong on the premise here. I think both of you are doing a great job, you and Harvey and our friend Mark here down at the bottom, cherry picking certain facts and elements where maybe there were elements of consent present. We all heard the testimony, but there's other facts. Let's talk about the Kid Cudi testimony, shall we? Where Cassie Ventura is saying very clearly that Sean Combs, when she was briefly dating Kid Cudi throughout the on and off of Sean Combs' relationship, that Sean Combs violently and viciously threatened to blow this man's car up if Cassie Ventura left the freak off, left with Kid Cudi, and pursued romantic relationships with her. She then gets afraid, gets in the car with Kid Cudi when he pulled up to pick her up, and then ultimately Sean Combs says, "Not only am I going to release the tapes if you move forward with this Kid Cudi situation and relationship, I'm also going to hurt him and hurt you." And then we know via the New York Times, I believe, reported that Kid Cudi affirmed to them and their sourcing that a car blew up in his driveway some days after Sean Combs made that threat. So I think this is a clear example where the loop is closed, Harvey.
Well, certainly what they're opening the door for is racketeering, which we're going to get into in a minute.
Which is
but the Kid Cudi thing is really interesting because she testified while she was dating Kid Cudi, she also was doing freak-offs with Diddy. And when asked why, her answer, and I still don't know how to process this, she said, "It's my job. It was my job." And I'm wondering what that means.
It could mean several things, Harvey. You're right. It could mean, I was willingness, but it also could mean I didn't feel free to leave. It could mean that I was so in a constant, this is the psychological warfare, I think, that could be argued. I think it is subtly being argued. I think it will be more aggressively be argued by the prosecution later in the case and testimony. But that there was a constant fear of threat of physical violence, which is why I think they spent so much time harping, if you will, on the physical abuse. And also, let's note, ladies and gentlemen, one fact pattern can be true of a multitude of criminal activity. The same facts, the same dragging, kicking in the head and beating that does lay the case successfully for a state prosecution of domestic violence is also, and I believe it's clause 4 of the federal indictment, where they do go into detail about how physical abuse, kicking, punching, dragging, beating is a part of the criminal behavior that Sean Combs coerced in their broader racketeering count. So I think that's their plan.
I wonder,
Harvey,
Mark and
Harvey Levin.
Yes, Nancy.
No offense to you, Levin, or Garagos, or Tacopina, but you just don't get it, all right? You think a woman on this jury is going to believe that Cassie Ventura wanted to be filmed naked and glistening pursuant to Sean Combs' request, just drenched in baby oil, and literally choke on a male sex worker's urine as he took a massive piss into her mouth? She choked. You think that was consensual? Good luck selling that to a jury.
Hey, Mark, I was going to actually raise that because that testimony about Sean Combs and the sex worker both peeing on Cassie to a point where she's choking, whether or not she verbally objected.
In her mouth. You said on her.
Mouth. In her mouth.
In her mouth.
In her mouth. And how does the defense overcome that? Because, whether she expressly said to him, "Don't do that," or not, how are they going to overcome something like that? I mean, how will the defense?
I think that's exactly what they're counting on. I think they're counting on the fact that you get the Nancy Grace doesn't like baby oil or doesn't like being urinated on feeling, and that's what they're counting on. I think if you
take pretty general. It's not just Nancy Grace.
I've I've been around long enough,
Combs
Nancy.
did this to himself. The state is not painting him out as a villain. He did. He shot his own foot.
When Nancy calms down for a second, you seem to be kind of excited by all this, but hold on. There are some very
typical Garrigo's comment.
I'm responding to you, Nancy. I'm not going to say that this is what you're into, but there are a lot of people. I'm not into crushing mice with high heels, or not into a lot of things that are fetishes. I don't know what's going on. All I know is this is in somebody's private sexual behavior, and it isn't something that I'm comfortable getting into and piling onto and talking about. And by the way, I will just say,
and you can say that argument to a jury. You notice Tacopina got real quiet.
Why don't you just?
No, I'm not quiet.
He knows that's BS.
I just don't want to interrupt anyone.
Why don't you hold on for 1 second? I would find a lot of things more credible if the first place they went was not to a civil lawyer, and if the second place they went was not to a money lawyer. I would find things more credible. I would think if somebody is feeling this way, that you don't, it's kind of like what I always say when there's a civil auto accident case. Do you go to the hospital first, or do you call 1-800, I'm injured? And I think that those are the kinds of things that most people, if they're looking at this dispassionately,
Joe,
stop being quiet. Come on.
Discounting, Mark, how battered women are treated, and that they don't report.
Joe, try to get a word in edgewise, Joe.
I know, Mark, I just don't want to be rude to anyone, but look, here's the deal. They're doing a great job making him out to be a horrific human being. We all knew that was coming, okay? Whether or not this amounts to federal crimes is another story. There's been so much evidence of consent in this case. Her being urinated on, whether she wants to or not, is not a federal crime. It's disgusting. It's not a federal crime. I mean, look, let's go down to the issue of, look, I was a former sex crimes prosecutor, okay? So I am not insensitive to these issues that women have when they're sex crimes victims. I'm not. But I will say this to you. It's fair game and it's fodder that if someone claims to be raped by someone, it's fair game to question that. Why would they go back to their rapist, to their torturer, their tormentor, and have consensual sexual relations with them again?
It's called Stockholm syndrome. Am I right, Nancy Grace?
Okay.
Stockholm syndrome.
She said they had a good night. How do you have a good night?
Currently looking at United versus Diddy.
With someone who raped you. I mean, that's
this is the psychological warfare, Joe.
Right. Okay.
By the way,
there's always an excuse for some action, right? She didn't go to the police ever. She went to a lawyer. She went to write a book. She went to sell her book. She got $20 million.
She went to a lawyer years and years and years later. And I am not going to stand by and let the two of you guys pretend that women are not beaten and raped in marriages every day and they don't tell police.
Okay. So, look, my take is that Cassie is a really believable witness. And this cuts both ways, because from my eye, she talked about issues that maybe hurt the prosecution's case. She did, acknowledge love letters that were sent. Mm-hmm. She did acknowledge things about not only loving freak-offs, but loving them as recently as 2017, well into their relationship. I think this all makes her so much more believable that she's not trying to paint a picture of perfection on the prosecution side. But at the same time, when she says in texts that I would love to have another freak-off, and she said it in 2009, she said it in 2017, and they started dating in 2008, and that's when they started the freak-offs. When she starts talking about loving him, being jealous of Kim Porter, and wanting to be the main girl and doing freak-offs because she was afraid he would do it with another woman, I don't know. I mean,
Harvey,
she was honest, but does that not hurt her?
Harvey,
Does it not hurt the prosecutor?
Let me ask you a basic question, Harvey. We know that men can rape their wives, right?
Yes.
We know that. And we know that if a husband were to rape his wife, or in this case, be in a romantic relationship and rape his romantic partner, that is still rape, even if after that particular rape instance occurs, they reconcile and then have a consensual sexual relationship. That does not negate the rape, correct?
It does not negate the rape.
That's not the factual pattern you have here. That's not what you have here. They didn't reconcile.
I'm asking.
She was in another relationship.
That's
a different scenario. That's a different.
Cassie did say that at points in times in the situation, I'm calling this situation, I'm calling the thing a thing, that there were apes going on in her situationship with Diddy.
Different factual scenario. She did not reconcile with him. She was on another relationship already. So there was no reconciliation.
No, that's not true, Joe. They did reconcile. She said I was with them on
Well, they were on and off. They were on and off by that point.
So this was constantly reconciling and breaking up. Yes, of course it is, Joe. It's you never been in anything on again, off again? I have. So we reconcile, we break up.
I don't know a lot of women. And listen, I find when I was a prosecutor and prosecuting sex crimes cases, I found women jurors to be most harsh critics of women when they were testifying. I really did. And I found that if some woman testified that she was raped and then went back to their rapist and said, I love you, I miss you, can we make love again, and that kind of stuff, it really hurt the credibility of that witness.
That's a very short-sighted. That is a very short-sighted woman.
That's fair game.
That's a very short-sighted woman, Joe. No,
that's fair game.
Another fact, Ebony, is that it wasn't just that she loved or thought she loved him. She met him when she was 19. What do you know? Not that she just had feelings for him, but he held her career, her hopes, her dreams, her whole future. I mean, if I thought that I was going to lose my law license, my home, my children, my family, everything, my livelihood, I don't know what I would do to hold on to that. That's what she was faced with at just age 19 to 21.
Think about what you're saying.
Nancy, that's no different than any other heterosexual power dynamic relationship. You could say that about doctors, you could say it about lawyers, you could say it about anybody. So I don't know. And to Ebony's point, Stockholm syndrome, I'm not aware.
You didn't even finish that thought. He just went, I don't know, and trailed off.
I haven't seen where anywhere in the indictment anybody's talking about Stockholm syndrome. What they are talking about.
No, I was just citing that, Mark.
Because that's not in the indictment. So, why would that be in the indictment?
Well, have you read the indictment? It's pretty detailed. It gives detail.
Yes, it is. It is detailed, but you don't have to advance your theories in an indictment.
By the way, the judge instructs a jury. You don't make a decision until you've heard all the evidence. And we haven't heard. We're on witness 3, and 2 of them were relatively small witnesses. So it's a little premature to be coming to the conclusion.
But there's a theme that I've seen so far, because I have seen prosecutors not closing the loop, and I've seen the defense not closing the loop. And let me give you an example that happened on cross-examination that I'm just fascinated by. That there was one exchange, a text exchange, where Diddy texted Cassie, let's do a freak-off. And all she said was, I'm ovulating. To me, that is saying, no, I will not have sexual intercourse. I don't think you need to use the word no. I think that means I am not going to have sex with a sex worker right now. But then he says, well, can we just kiss? And she says, yes. And then they do a freak off that lasts 10 hours. So I'm thinking, well, what happened during the 10 hours? Did they have intercourse? Because if they did, well, that would kill Diddy, because he's luring her into a situation and then turning it. But they just dropped it, and they never closed the loop. So number one, I don't understand why they brought that up if it's incomplete. And why are we seeing this 3/4 loop and neither side is doing the other quarter? That's the way I'm seeing this.
And that's where Nancy's point, though, Harvey, about any woman on that jury that's ever had a menstrual cycle is going to be able to tell you that there is no scenario under God's beautiful sun in which a reasonable woman is wanting and willing to have that type of sexual experience on her menstrual. It's just not fathomable. And this is maybe one of those things you, as men, you guys just kind of can't get. But any woman is going to understand this for the coercive nature that it very much is.
You know,
Safe like repair, safe like replace.
Sadly, windshield chips can turn into windshield cracks.
We are getting live updates. Let me make sure I'm off. Okay, live updates, right? From Diddy all day long, y'all. Diddy all day, Diddy all day. We have been updating y'all on all things updatable to Diddy. Diddy's on his first week out of the gate of the Diddy trial. Okay, we've had testimony from the security guard, the escorts, and Cassie's been on the stand for like 20 hours. It's crazy, right? So that's what we're doing. Drop y'all's teacups in the chat. Let me know y'all are in the room with Tanisha Talks Teas. We are keeping it going with the United States versus Diddy. Where are you guys? Like, I'm in the middle of everything. I cannot be pulled either way right now. So I think that right now it's weak for the charges that Diddy's on. I haven't, we're only in the first week. So that's why I'm like where I am standing. I'm not swayed over to any side, prosecution or defense. Of course, if Diddy is found to be credible, or liable for these charges, and Cassie's credible for her testimony, then I hope Diddy gets what he needs, he deserves. And I also don't want an innocent person to go to prison. So I'm in the middle, tea sippers. Where are y'all? Have y'all been swayed to the left, swayed to the right? And where are y'all standing at in the Diddy trial? So far, first we got the gate. I'm just where I am with it, y'all. I mean, I don't think it's all that strong. Like I was hoping, like I was telling y'all first day, like Cassie got to come out hitting hard. She got to come out swinging. And I don't know if that, to lock Diddy up. You know what I'm saying? And I thought that was the motive for, you know what I'm saying? Cassie testifying against Diddy. Like, I thought that's what it was going to be. But mostly it's like, oh, we were lovey-dovey. So we're back up. We're back up, y'all. Keep your teacups filled up. We got the Cassie Diddy explosive testimony at the Diddy trial.
Something that I have found absolutely true. The harshest critics of women are women jurors. It is uncanny to me, the kind of harsh light that women look at other women who are on the stand, and I'm going to be so bold and maybe betray my age and my generation. They're harshest on good-looking or attractive
Thank
women.
you.
My
Jealous.
experience over the
Do
years.
you ever get
Wishing
tired
somebody
of
was
being
peeing
told
on
you're a
them.
misogynist? I'm just curious
my
because
God.
first you refer to the prosecution as a six-pack of white women. Now
you
this,
like that,
like
yeah,
you know
today
the mind of a
too.
woman.
Do you ever get tired of the prosecutorial screed? And you have never, is there any point where you just let down and say, maybe we should wait and hear all the evidence? Have you ever said that?
Plenty of times.
Okay, good.
You just weren't listening.
That. Okay, that could be. You were yelling so loud I didn't hear it.
So, Joe,
Harvey, can I just say one thing? Look, Ebony and Nancy make great points. And this isn't easy. Look, Combs is easy to kill right now. Easy. But it is fair game. And anyone who says it's not fair game, as a defense lawyer, we would have to give in our licenses if we didn't say this. There are issues you have to question about Cassie Ventura's testimony. One, she did not report this to law enforcement or anyone at the time of. She never went to the police. Instead, she went to a lawyer and sought money first for a book and then for a civil lawsuit and got $20 million. Never went to law enforcement. That's one. Two, she has tons of messages talking about consent.
Probably hundreds
That's
of
fair
thousands.
game. Three, she claims she was raped. Then after the rape, she went back and had consensual sex, and not only said consensual sex, but had a great time with her rapist. Those are things that just the normal person doesn't really jive with. And that's something that is fair game for, and not only is fair game, it's obligatory for any defense attorney defending their client and the United States Constitution to bring up in a courtroom. It's fair game. So we're not attacking the victim. We're bringing out facts, Ebony, that are just real. She didn't report this to the police. There's consensual evidence all over the place. I mean, she got money. She sought money. She tried to sell a manuscript of a book. Come on, it's fair.
I'm gonna let you finish up. Let me make this one. Listen, you're making great, zealous arguments on behalf of the defense. Counselor, I will give you that. Let me tell you something. I'm dressed up in this beautiful pink suit, yes, for my beautiful panelist and Harvey here tonight, but I'm actually headed to a fundraising gala for an organization called Safe Horizon. I was a board member for 6 years, Joe. Beautiful. It's the largest victim services for...
I know, it's a beautiful organization.
Beautiful organization for victims of domestic violence, child abuse, et cetera, and violence against men, by the way. And what we know, and Nancy knows this being a lifetime prosecutor herself, and many y'all know this too, victims often of sexual abuse, rape, and trauma black out. They don't remember for years. The trauma is so severe that they cannot even muster a memory, a recounting to go to the police, as you so nobly suggested, Joe. So it's going to be prosecution.
That's not here.
We don't know if it's not here. We don't know if it's not here.
Hey,
we don't know that.
I think that they're right. I think that Tacopina and Garagos are right.
Yeah,
I think they're right in that. These are obstacles for the state because unless the jury gets explained to, like you are doing right now, unless they have maybe an expert to explain it to the jury, why she kept on, she was afraid to lose her career, maybe even her life. I mean, that video says it all. She was being dragged back into a hotel room. She didn't want to go. She took a beating. So why did she stay? They're right. The state has an issue. That doesn't mean they're going to lose their case. That means they've got to explain to the jury like you just were, Ebony.
Thank you, Nancy. I agree with you. They got to they got to earn it. They got to earn it.
When they explain that and when they make the point that maybe somebody blacked out, and that's true. There's adrenaline rushes, everything else. They're going to also have another hurdle to explain is when you wake up from this blackout experience. Why did you call the money lawyer as opposed to the police? And
it's called the statute of limitations on state cases, Garagos. So you know that. Many of these state cases.
No.
That's not true. Years passed and she couldn't tell anybody.
We get the point, and we get the point, and everybody is kind of agreeing that it's going to be something that the prosecution is going to have to deal with.
Yes.
Nancy, I'm wondering. It's interesting you kind of conceded that point, and it's kind of an obvious one. What about what they're trying to do by saying Cassie was a swinger too? And she acknowledged on the stand during cross-examination, she used to go to swingers clubs with Diddy, that she would watch as he'd have sex with other women. She talked about that they would freely use drugs during the freak-off. It gave them this incredible high. So they are, in a way, painting her with a brush that the prosecution used on Diddy. And even went to a point of saying she was also violent in a bar fight where she wanted to kill somebody. So is that fair game? Is it appropriate to do in a case like this? Because that's what they did.
Well, as I often said to juries, who do you think Sean Combs is hanging out with? Nuns and priests and virgins? No. Okay? Cassie Ventura, like all of us, is not perfect. And she's probably done things she was ashamed of, things she wished she hadn't done. That does not mean
Cassie
she
lives
cannot
10
be raped
lifetimes
for
compared
sex
to the rest of our
trafficking. And
asses.
as to consent, whether she went along with the freak-offs and more because she loved Combs or was afraid, that video shows she was forced back to that hotel room by force. She had knots on her head. She had to call security for help. And however you want to paint that, good luck. Have at it.
You know, Harvey, that's Nancy just gave you the if you sleep with dog, you wake up with fleas analogy. I think that most of these jurors, as most of my experiences, are going to keep their minds open unless they're stealth jurors, which is certainly a possibility. But I think jurors are going to wait and they're going to see. And my experience is in sex crime style cases, and I think even cases where I haven't tried it and somebody else has tried it, you've seen the results, and I could tick them all off. Generally, when it is a relationship, jurors have more trouble than if it is not in a relationship, and that is a hurdle. I mean, that's just as a defense lawyer, I've seen that repeatedly.
Nancy,
I think that's true.
Nancy, I know you have an event, and I don't want to hold you hostage. I'd love to keep
My
you
son
here.
is in the state championship soccer playoff. Yes.
Okay,
and as much as I'd like to keep whipping Garagos and Tacopina's tail with Ebony, I have to go to that. But let me just say, every witness that takes a stand is subjected to a severe cross. And I think the state is going to close the loop, as you refer to it. And I also think that the jury can see through what the defense is doing. As much as Garagos and Tacopina may hate it, that video did emerge. It happened, and it corroborates her. I think that is going to turn the day.
Can we at least, guys, agree on one thing? We wish your son good luck.
Probably not.
And we hope he wins.
Oh,
is that okay? Is that okay?
Thank you. Thanks, Harvey.
I don't fight with that. Good luck to you, Nancy. And bye.
Good luck to your son.
You know it. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Nancy.
Bye, Nancy.
Okay, we got.
Oh God, it's a shame, Harvey, that Nancy's no longer with us. I was so tired of getting my ass whooped by Nancy. Thank God. Thank God she's not here anymore.
Well, look.
Okay.
I got to ask. I want to ask you guys something, because I think the defense has a problem with this. That there is now an unedited version of that 2016 Intercontinental Hotel tape. And I think it is worse. I mean, I've been hearing rumblings that the defense was saying, oh, this is better because it's not sped up and he doesn't look as big. I think it's way worse for the defense. Got to warn you, this video just shows terrible brutality. Cassie looks really calm. It doesn't look like she's in some argument over a cell phone. And he just comes out from nowhere and just brutally attacks her. So this video is worse than what, I mean, look at that. She's putting her shoes on or something, and then he just goes crazy on her.
Horrific. Harvey, here's the problem. It is horrific. It's disgusting. Any guy who could do that to a woman has real issues and is not a man, okay? Putting that aside, that is because of the reaction I just had and you just had and undoubtedly a jury just had. That's why the prosecution has played this. How many times already in 3 days? 6, 7, 8, 9 times already? This tape, one tape? What is this evidence of? This is evidence that he's an abuser, that he's a beater, that he commits domestic violence, that he's a bully, that he's a coward. All these horrific things about him, okay? But does that fill the void where the evidence of sex trafficking should be? Does that fill the void of racketeering evidence? I don't think it does. And if I'm the defense in this case,
I think they have other facts for that, Joe. I think they got other facts.
I know.
For that.
So okay, great. Other facts. But then why is this being played over and over again? Why? Because it's trying to get the jury to get emotional and get them to want to hate him and convict him because of this tape, which is a domestic violence act, which is a state offense. It's not a federal crime. And this is something that, if I were the defense, I would make sure the jury understood they're being played on here.
No, they're not being played on. It absolutely is domestic violence, which is not at trial on this case. I agree with you, Joe. But you know what it's also evidence of physical abuse, which they are enumerating in the original indictment under count 1 of the racketeering conspiracy count. They absolutely are saying this is a part of his overall mechanism, Joe, of control, of his absolute domain over this woman and some of these other victims. And when the jury sees like Harvey says, he's coming out like a madman. This woman is calmly trying to exit and go about her business. She doesn't even have on shoes, for God's sake. And this is how deranged, how depraved, how angered he is. And that, I think, goes a long way. If he can be this controlling here, why can't they believe he could be so controlling in other parts of their factual case?
So, Ebony,
it's nothing more than character assassination. I hate to say it. Joe nailed it, and it is what it is. And I suppose if you're a prosecutor, you have something like this, you're just going to play it every chance you get. But remember, Harvey and I are old enough to remember Rodney King.
Oh my God, I was just going to mention that. I was literally just going to mention that. Go.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Rodney King.
Well, no, I want to.
In the Rodney King case, and it was in Simi Valley, and I was thinking about it this week because same judge presided over the Menendez trial.
Stanley Weisberg.
Stanley Weisberg. And he let the prosecutors in that case just repeatedly play the Rodney King tape.
We are becoming the same person. What is going on? I was literally going to. Because it diminishes the impact of it. You know, Mark's going to love this because I always tell them, don't do law lessons. But Melvin Belli, an old lawyer, very famous lawyer, he really developed the concept of demonstrative evidence. And what he did was, there was a case where a man lost his leg, I think in a car accident. And the guy sat in court with a pant leg that went down to his shoes, and you never saw the leg. And he got up on the stand and he testified. At one point, Melvin Belli had his client step down, and in front of the jury, he showed them the stump, and they were horrified. And he put the pants down and never showed it again. And the impact on the jury was huge. And this is one of the things that created demonstrative evidence. I saw this in Rodney King, that they played it so much, and the media played it so much in the year before the trial.
You got used to it.
It didn't have the impact by the time it got to court. And I'm wondering, Ebony, that the prosecutor, by playing it over and over and over, are you diminishing the impact than if you just saw it once or twice?
Here's what's different with Rodney King and that example. Very compelling, by the way, Harvey, example of the gentleman with the one leg. Number one, though Sean Combs is not a private citizen that this jury is just seeing for the first time. So much of what the prosecution's assignment here is to deconstruct. They've got to literally deconstruct, for many of these jurors, 30, 40, 50 years of knowing Sean Combs as a hero. You guys culturally got to understand what this man means to some of these jurors who have grown up not only on his music, guys, but on his cultural influence, on his ability to be a black man in America and make good on the amount and savvy. See, that's a lot of narrative to overcome. So personally, if I was prosecuting this case, I wouldn't have shown the video this many times. I'm conceding that. And also, I do see where they've got a very large narrative to overcome to make who, for many on that jury, not all, but
Okay. Okay. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Welcome, sippers. Welcome. I hadn't put my stream. So anyway, hope you guys are having a wonderful Tuesday afternoon. I am having a great day so far. Things are rolling into the second week of the Diddy trial. Sorry I couldn't be here yesterday. I had some important things to do, but I came live last night and we sipped some tea from Nottoway station burning, and also the New Orleans jail convicted prisoners that should have been transported to prison break, right? So we got into all things of that. So I have been giving y'all all the tea. And I thank you guys for supporting me. So definitely I'm going to share my screen and start Sean Diddy trial. Start it up. Let's get into it.
far this week and what's ahead. So yesterday, Chris, we heard from some former friends of Cassie Ventura, Diddy's ex-girlfriend, including one friend, Carrie Morgan. You say her testimony was the most important of the trial so far.
Yes, Carrie testified that she was her best friend and told her, you need to get out of this relationship. You need to leave.
Okay, so have we already had testimony? See, like I said yesterday, guys, I was busy with my own matters of affairs, okay? But I will go live as much as I possibly can to keep all of the sippers up to date with what's going on with Diddy's trial. So we had the best friend. I knew she was going to be testifying, right? I just don't know when. Now we know. Did she testify yesterday? Okay, we got to get into all things Miss Carrie's testimony.
She said, I can't. He controls my career, my apartment, my car, everything, and I cannot leave. That ties everything together so far for the government. It brings her to the point where she can't get out. She's stuck in this relationship, and it ties, so it brings into everything in that the government needed and ties that all together with the trafficking. So it's what the government needed to tie their case together so far.
A lot of the testimony has focused on violence, and the defense has repeatedly said, he's not on trial for being a domestic abuser, but violence is still important to show because that could go toward the force and coercion aspect of a sex trafficking charge, right?
Yes, and that's why I think Carrie Morgan's testimony was so impactful yesterday to that element that they're trying to bring that in together, that she was stuck here. It's not that this was just not just that he's a violent person, it's that she was trapped in this as a prisoner, if you will, in this relationship that she couldn't get out of. That, I think, was the most important part of her testimony.
And one of them even testified, I think it was Carrie Morgan, that she was assaulted by Combs and paid $30,000. And discrepancy over, was that Combs' money? Did Cassie Ventura give her that money?
So I think it's no doubt it was Combs' money, but the key to that was Combs assaulted her with a chair or a coat hanger or something, but it was Ventura that went to her.
That is called guerrilla pimping, okay? That is called guerrilla pimping. Let me open up the chat, Sipver, so I can see who's here and who's dropping those teacups, okay? Remember to drop your teacups. When you come get your teacup filled up, please remember to like and subscribe, okay? When a guy, hits you with something of like a coat hanger, it leaves something like a whelp on you as if you have been burned, right? It whelps up almost like a burn. So in the streets, they call that guerrilla pimping on a girl. Okay, so if he beat her with a hammer, he was up in that day. He thought he was in his guerrilla pimping shit.
With a non-disclosure agreement, offered her the $30,000 in exchange for signing a non-disclosure agreement. Now that really, I think, bodes well for the defense, because it wasn't Combs' attorney that went to her. It was Ventura that went to her and said, hey, here's 30 grand, sign this non-disclosure agreement. You can't talk about this anymore. So that really that helps the defense more than it helps the prosecution.
We also expect the assistant to Combs, this man, David James, to continue testifying today. And then we're also expecting to hear from Cassie Ventura's mother. What might she do to help the prosecution, and what might help the defense with her testimony?
So just looking ahead, I think that you're going to hear her mother testify that she had talked with her about what was going on, that she was aware of the abuse and the fact that Combs had her trapped, if you will, in this relationship that she couldn't get out of. She's got this huge record deal that she signed with his company, and he was holding that over her head. She couldn't get out of the relationship. On cross, I think you're gonna see a little bit more pushback on cross with her, a little bit more aggression on cross. You knew this was going on, yet you didn't do anything. You're her mother, so why didn't you go in there with the police? Why didn't you get lawyers? Why didn't you do the things necessary as a mother to get her out of this situation?
Those are all questions we've been asking.
Why didn't you go charging over there with the police and do something about this? And yet you didn't, because you liked the money. And that, I think, is going to be a pretty stern cross-examination for her.
That is exactly what I speculated. The reason why Cassie's mother never entered the group chat up until now that we are aware of is because she was also in like a Tina Turner situation, right? Where if you guys seen the movie with Angela Bassett as she played the Tina Turner character, Tina Turner's mother was, very intrigued and involved with the fame, the money, the homes, the cars, the coats, the jewelry, the trips, things like that, right? She's like, just let him be a man. He ain't doing nothing but being a man. Let him be a man, girl. You do what you need to do. Keep on keeping on up with this lifestyle. Okay, so like Tina Turner's mother, she was intrigued and moved by the money.
At some point, we should hear from some sort of a psychologist too, probably, right? That the prosecution will bring in and just to detail, what happens in the minds of alleged victims of sex trafficking.
There's going to have to be an expert that the government's going to bring in. It's going to have to say, this is what happens when you're a victim like this that's trapped in this relationship that feels they cannot get out. And to tie this together for the jury, because a lot of people are thinking and just naturally thinking, if this is that bad, you just get up and go. And you've already heard several times, even in her cross-examination, that she made the conscious choice to go to this freak-off. Well, if you're trapped in a relationship, you don't decide, I'm going over there. If it's that bad, I'm just not going over there. And so it's hard for a juror, an average person, to say, I'm going to go over there and engage in this. If you need that expert to explain that to you.
Okay, Chris Whitaco, our senior.
Okay, that is exactly what we needed to get the day started, all right? So, as we were saying last week, right, Sippers, that we were looking for the prosecution to bring in a psychologist, right? Psychiatrist, somebody to explain more of what this Stockholm syndrome would look like in Cassie's case, perhaps, okay? So now we're going to get into who testified. They said Carrie. Okay, Carrie testified in the Diddy trial. Let's go ahead and look at some tea on that, okay? Ooh. Her name is Carrie Morgan. She's a Caucasian woman alleged to be Cassie.
We're monitoring testimony in the federal courtroom in the Sean Diddy Combs trafficking trial. No cameras inside of that courtroom, but on the stand this afternoon is Carrie Morgan, a former best friend of Cassie Ventura, who testified all last week. Morgan says she saw Combs assault Cassie Ventura several times, and someone who's been keeping us updated there on the ground is our Court TV legal correspondent, Kelly Craft. Kelly, so glad to have you, especially since we can't see what's going on inside. But what is the latest with Carrie Morgan testifying?
Julia and Ted. So everyone's just making their way back inside the New York City courthouse after a very short lunch break. So people are just making their way in. As soon as court resumes, the direct examination of Carrie Morgan will continue. Carrie Morgan, the former friend of Cassie Ventura, who said that once Sean Diddy Combs assaulted her, their friendship stopped. So what did she say about that particular assault? She said that she was at her house, that Combs had come over demanding that she tell him who Cassie was cheating on him with. He became angry, grabbed her around the neck, and then ended up hitting her with a wooden hanger. Shortly after that, this was about a month after that, her and Cassie met up at a pizzeria. And Cassie, according to her testimony, told her that you're overblowing this, because she now had hired an attorney. Carrie Morgan had hired an attorney. Cassie said, you're exaggerating this. She then had her friend sign a non-disclosure agreement and said Sean Combs will be giving you $30,000. So that's some of the testimony that was taking place before the lunch break took place. Now we're making our way back in. We do have some other testimony we can put up for you on the screen. So we're bringing it to you in full screen form because, of course, no cameras are in the courtroom, but she did testify that she had encouraged Ventura to call police. This was after that 2016 hotel altercation at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles. After the assault, Combs arrived at Ventura's apartment yelling and banging on the door with a hammer. She said, I don't think she cared that he could come in there and kill her. So it's been some really tough testimony to listen to as Carrie has been on the stand recounting these events. She also testified that Combs assaulted her in 2018. So this is the incident I'm talking about with the hanger. He came up behind me, she said. He choked me, then boomeranged a wooden hanger at my head, had finger marks on my neck. And then, as I mentioned, she received a $30,000 check, some money from Combs, and then signed that non-disclosure agreement. So, again, direct examination will continue with Carrie Morgan on the stand as soon as testimony gets back underway. But another situation where we're hearing testimony talking about these alleged incidents of abuse that people had witnessed. And remember, Carrie Morgan, when she first got on the stand, talking about how she didn't even want to be here, but she's been subpoenaed, so she has to testify. But she's glad to be away from these people and their problems.
Wow. Sounds like it's powerful testimony there inside.
Yeah, riveting. Kelly Craft, thank you. Kelly will be with us every hour on the hour to give us these updates from court. And as Kelly said, they're just returning from the lunch break with more direct. Let's bring in our guest for the hour from San Francisco, trial attorney Alexis Rosenberg. Alexis, you're in Florida, Sarasota, Florida. Yeah, sorry. What do you think of this building the monster that the federal government is doing? I mean, the images of him at the freakouts, the images we saw of him, Sean Combs, dragging Cassie by the elevators, and now this story of him chasing her down at an apartment with a hammer, hammering the door of an apartment. It is right out of a horror film on some levels. What's your take on how the government is doing, keeping in mind this is a racketeering human trafficking case, not an assault case?
Well, with regard to the prosecution with the human trafficking and RICO case, I'm not sure they're doing such, but they are definitely presenting that systematic violence, and that everybody that was in his circle of being was under this intense threat that appears, based on this testimony, to be continual.
You know what surprises me, Alexis, when I'm listening to Kelly recount what's happening inside the courtroom, and Carrie Morgan was the person who was there with Cassie Ventura after that 2016 video, which so many people think this entire trial is about, the 2016 hotel elevator bank video, and that she urged Cassie to call police at that time, but she didn't want to draw any attention to it. She didn't want the authorities involved or to know who it was. I believe there actually was a 911 call made, but no names were given and no report taken. This could have changed everything, not just for justice for Cassie, but also Sean Diddy Combs may not be facing a RICO trafficking case if this had been dealt with in 2016. Your thoughts on that?
Well, based on the testimony that we've heard, because it is all circulating around that video, but I'm assuming that the prosecution is going to present more information and evidence other than just that video, or they're going to be in real trouble with trying to get a conviction for the charges that he's on trial for. But yeah, I think that the problem was everybody was afraid that he was going to make that go away, which he kind of sort of did. He made the video go away.
Absolutely. It was leaked, but it was after the statute of limitations in California had elapsed, so he doesn't face any repercussions from a criminal standpoint because of that video. But he was successful in keeping it under wraps, at least for a while. And of course, now it's a big part of the federal government's case.
Okay, so we're wrapping up. Okay. Yeah. Week 1, we had Carrie come up and testify, y'all. That was crazy. So let's go back and read this.
Then boomeranged a wooden hanger.
Okay. Trial witness Carrie Morgan testified Combs assaulted her in 2018. He came up behind me, she says, and choked me, then boomeranged a wooden hanger at my head. I had finger marks on my neck. Oh my God. She says that she received $30,000 from him and she signed an NDA. Hasn't spoken to Cassie since 2018. So Cassie jeopardized, she sabotaged her friendship with Carrie for Diddy. You know, along with Carrie telling her, leave, like, let's get out of here. Let's not be, you know, subjected to this. And Cassie turned it down. She walked away. She walked back to Diddy, and that's where she remained until she finally left in, like, what, 2020, 1920? Oh, my. Let's get a little bit more understanding of what Carrie testified in the Diddy trial, y'all. Oh. Well, let's jump over to Danity Kane. Hold on. As y'all know, Danity Kane was one of the girl groups that Diddy orchestrated. Okay.
How many times have you
making the band, the Diddy, Dirty Diddy shit? And Dawn Richardson was produced out of that. Okay. She was a girl singer in the Danity Kane group.
Milner, who is our in-court reporter for the Sean Diddy Combs criminal trial. Elizabeth, so good to see you. You were in court today, week 2. Continuation of Dawn Richard's testimony. She left the stand, Carrie Morgan on the stand. Before we get to the substance of what they had to say, what is the vibe like in court today? How does Sean Combs appear? Who's there? Paint the picture for us, because unfortunately, as we know, there are no cameras. There are no audio recordings allowed in that courtroom. What did you see and what did you hear?
Yeah, well, the tone as far as this morning goes, a lot of people are kind of anticipating what would the rest of Dawn Richard's testimony look like, and especially more so, how would the cross-examination and how would Diddy's defense attorneys kind of be able to credibility. As far as just everyone inside the courtroom today, it doesn't look like there was that big kind of present for the defendant side that we've seen last week, especially when we came to day 1 and even day 2 of testimony, and that we didn't see any of Diddy's children inside that courtroom, which I think is a little big and a little not big at the same time. We saw images over this weekend that the twins were in during prom season. They were in their prom dresses and that sort. Not 100% sure where the sons are in this kind of picture, as far as are they on the West Coast again, because the twins are about to graduate. So it's unclear why the family presence wasn't so big as it has been for day 1 and day 2. As far as Diddy himself, though, it seems like that didn't necessarily faze him that much. I assume that he, looks forward to seeing his family inside that courtroom, but maybe understanding that they had other obligations. He didn't seem too bothered by that or anything like that. So as far as him being inside that courtroom, it was still the same old Diddy that we've seen, kind of in the same old outfit that we've seen him in as well, too. He was wearing a tan sweater. He had a white undershirt. He had khakis on. When he comes into the courtroom, he hugs his attorneys. He chats with them, all those types of things. And so a lot of people were just anticipating what would it look like once Dawn Richard got back on the stand. And let me tell you something, Jesse, when I saw her on the stand today, and even on Friday as well, too, she appeared like she just didn't want to be there. You tell that she was very uncomfortable, especially talking about her recollection of her time that she had worked with Diddy, her time after working with Diddy, especially during the cross-examination part. I thought that maybe she would get a little emotional because she just appeared maybe a little nervous, maybe a little intimidated, not necessarily sure, but she was very soft-spoken while she was on that stand today answering some of the questions. A lot of those questions obviously had to do with the egg frying incident. It had to do with why Dawn Richard even continued working with Diddy even afterwards, or even wanting to work with Diddy afterwards. And so a lot of the anticipation, or just the overall tone inside that courtroom, especially when it came to that cross-examination, it was kind of it was a little rough to watch. It was a little like a lot of people, especially us in the gallery, in the press, were just kind of like, wow, this is a little brutal. And they kind of hit the points that they wanted to hit while them being defense attorneys. And so I think that the prosecution really kind of had to tighten everything up as far as, trying to get maybe back in the jury's good graces after kind of seeing that cross-examination go and all those holes that were poked into her testimony. And so that was just the overall essence and tone of today's, especially this morning before Carrie Morgan got on the witness stand.
To go by, because I know it's so loud. So this, Elizabeth, how is the jury responding to Dawn Richard's testimony, and what were some of the highlights? I mentioned it briefly before you came on air, kind of summarized some of the points, but what were some of the points that came out today from her testimony, both on direct and cross-examination, and how was the jury responding to her testimony? Because let's not forget, she is a corroborating witness for Cassandra Ventura Fine. She helped to articulate some of the finer elements of racketeering. What were some of the highlights from her testimony, both on direct and cross, and how was the jury responding?
Well, absolutely. As far as being under direct, it was really just kind of ironing out the details as far as what happened with this whole egg skillet incident, that being the incident that happened in 2009, according to Dawn Richard, where essentially Cassie was cooking Diddy breakfast. Diddy comes downstairs, gets upset about
Thanks for watching. Remember to show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing. It's a blessing. Keep your teacups filled and ready for my next upload. Until then, stay inspired and remember, always stay sifted.